All right. Well, hey, good morning, Rise City Church. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Vision Sunday. And for those that have been here in the past, hopefully that's exciting to you. For those, this is your first time, I think this is the best day for you to be here as we really kind of just dive into the things that we've seen God do over the years, the things that we're anticipating that are still to come, as well as provide opportunities to say, how can we all engage and jump in? The church launched actually in October of 2013 at Hill Creek School in Santee. And we started these kind of vision times with a thing we called a family dinner. So once a year we do a family dinner. We meet in the multi-purpose room and provide a meal, and then I would share all these things. But over time, as we grew, it became less economical to try to feed everybody, and a little bit less sanity as everyone kept bringing lots of kids. And so it was like a little bit of chaos. And so we thought, you know what, let's move it to Sunday mornings so that everybody can kind of hear it, and we'll have Rise City kids do what they do, and we'll all be fully aware and concentrated on what is happening. So that's what we're doing today, marking our 10th Vision Sunday, and just a lot of things that I'm excited to share with you. But I want to start by, before talking about what's next, I want to start with celebrating what God has already done. I always think it's so important for us to be a people who say thank you before give me more. Okay, that alone is worth the price of admission today, okay? Say thank you before give me more. And so I want to start by saying thank you and looking at a couple numbers, and these numbers representing things that God has done either this year or over the course of the last 9 years in the life of Rise City Church. All right, so fully permissible to applaud, be excited, all that stuff as we celebrate some significant numbers which represent significant impact in people's lives. The first number is the number 13. 13 is the number of churches that we've been able to help in partnership with others. Churches started in the first 9 years in Rise City Church's history. 10 churches in San Diego and 3 churches internationally. And the reason it's such a big deal is we have this conviction. We were a church plant, and we believe that one of the most effective ways to connect with disconnected people is starting new churches. So to be able to have started these 13 churches is a big deal. Let me give you the names of some of these. We've given to these as well as provided help with leadership structure in these different churches, but Grace City Church, Risen Church, Luminous City Church, Rev A Church, Multiply Church, Captivate Church, Rhythm Church, Trailhead Church, City Lights Church, Nuvo Church, The Refinery, 2 churches in Bolivia, 1 in Peru, and then a bunch recently there in India as well as Nepal. So not the most traditional names, no Second Baptist Church is in there, but that's okay. Lots of churches, thank you for being generous to making that happen. So 13 is a big number to celebrate, right? The next number is 40. 40 is the average number of newcomers that attend our newcomer social every few months. And that is an indication of just people hearing about the church, getting involved in the church, and we celebrate that, especially as we've become this missionary church, sending so many people to Idaho and Tennessee and Texas. I mean, we are generous in sending so many people out, so it's great to see so many people coming. Our next newcomers social will be September 18th, and so if you haven't been a part of that, make sure to join and be a part of it. 71. 71 is the number of people thus far in 2022 who have went down to Mexico, Tijuana or Ensenada, to build a home for a family there in need with our Homes of Hope initiative that came about because of the Christmas offering. And that is so exciting to see people put action to their faith and go across the border and build these homes. So that is worth celebrating. Super, super exciting. By the end of this year, that number will be over 100 people. Our next trip's in September. There's still spots available. And so if you want to know more, you can go online or talk to someone at the Welcome Center. But we're excited to see people just being active and being used to make a difference in people's lives just right across the border there in Mexico. 302. This is the number that I know Robert and his team with Taylor and Mike love. 302 is the amount of you that are currently involved in a small group. Which is really exciting because we believe in what God does when we sit in rows, but we also believe even more so what he does when you sit in circles. And when you get involved in the lives of others and you ask questions and you spur on one another and you grow together. So 302 thus far are in a small group, and by hopefully in the next couple of weeks as new groups launch, that number will continue to grow, with some of you saying, yeah, I'll try that out. 337. 337 is the amount of people thus far in 9 years who have been baptized at Rise City Church. And so we celebrate that step of faith, just expressing outwardly what God has done internally in their hearts. 24 people thus far in 2022 who have been baptized and praying for more to come. 350 is the next number. It's an ish number. 350-ish, because it was hard to track down fully who this was, but we know that this is at least how many adults are serving in some capacity here at Rise City Church, which represents about 50% of the adult attendance, which is huge. So thank you for serving, and just like small groups, I'm hoping to see that number keep getting bigger after the end of this talk today, which is awesome. So now you know where I'm going a little bit. Next number, 1,001. 1,001 is the average Sunday morning attendance in 2022. That includes people here in the building as well as engaging online. Right at 1,000 people per Sunday that are hearing the good news and getting engaged. And it's still just overwhelming to think that God would allow us to have that opportunity in people's lives. This next one, we're going to take a huge jump upward with this next number. The next number is 32,640. 32,640 was before today the amount of donut holes you've consumed thus far in 2022. Yes, that's correct. We are on pace for about 45 to 50,000 donut holes consumed. Right now, we're just shy of about 2 million calories. We're going to press through and hit 3 million before the end of the year. And if you ever come to me and say something like, I'm just not being fed, I'm like, you're crazy. Yes, you are. Mary's Donuts loves Rise City Church, and we love Mary's Donuts. Amen? Yes. Now, some of you on your own might want to calculate of the 32,640 how many you have individually consumed, and then keep that to yourself. Hey, the last number is 2.7 million. That's not calories. That is, thus far in 9 years, how much money we've been able to give completely away at Rise City Church. Which is staggering, and by the end of this year, with what we already give monthly and the Christmas offering, we're going to push past $3 million that God's allowed us and entrusted us with to be able to send out to just impact people's lives in the name of Jesus. So thank you for your generosity and the way God has worked in that. With all these numbers, is that not worth applauding and saying, thank you for what God has done, right? It's amazing. It's staggering to just be a part of it for almost now a decade. But here's the thing, what I want to kind of shift to is, as much as it's amazing and staggering, it feels like there's this fog that's kind of thickened and hung over us, though, over the last couple years. And kind of now moving into this post-pandemic world and time, there's this fog that many of us find ourselves in. And at times we feel like we're about ready to see the fog clear and start to maybe see some of the sunshine rise above it. And you see moments of optimism, some spiritual growth. But I'm just being honest about myself, and maybe I think for you, but just in general of our country, it just feels like, it just still feels like things are off, right? It's hard to put our finger on, like, what is it? It just feels like it's off. And there are moments that we wake up with great resilience and excitement, and then maybe an hour later, you're just like, oh gosh. And you just feel more tired, at times maybe lethargic, for ruthlessly honest, just lazy. Feels like that there's a sadness, maybe even to the point of depression. There's this low-level hum underneath the surface of anxiety and fear, worry. You talk to people and you hear people asking questions like, is this like what happened in Rome? Are we watching the beginning of the end of America? And it's just like that, America. It's like, we got to say it in Southern drawl here in Lakeside. But if we're honest, right, and you see like the fog is hanging over some households with marriages, reliance more on different substances to cope or to avoid. And church in general, church attendance has never really come back to where it once was. And even though people might say things like, no, I'm online now. It's like the statistics don't support that either. And so sometimes it does. It feels like there's moments like, we're here. And then there's a lot of like, man, I'm just feeling off. Can anybody resonate with that? And it's not just with adults. That feeling of offness or sadness or angst is also very prevalent in what we would refer to as the next generation. Birth to maybe mid-20s. And when we say next gen here, particularly, we're talking even birth to like 12th grade with seniors in high school. But we've seen a hockey stick of elevation, an increase in anxiety, depression, and suicide rates in the teenage world. How could they not have had a lot of impact based upon all the things that took place with the pandemic in school and in person or online, and then being like inundated now with screens? And I can't imagine what life would be like when I was in high school, if I had social media. That would have just been a train wreck. And they're trying to navigate through things that used to have definitive borders and absolute truths that now are just wishy-washy in terms of identity and gender and sexuality. And it's just like, what is true? What can be trusted? Who can be trusted? What's fabricated? What's not? And all the while they've watched the adult examples ahead of them not always act like adults, but act more like kids. And it's caused a great angst, or they've been in the midst of trying to figure out their parents who are co-parenting or even trying to stay married. And the fog has settled in on the next generation in a very thick manner that I think should cause us a lot of concern. And as a father of 4, it causes me deep concern. Which then begs the question, like, what's the remedy? This feeling off or feeling like things are just like not always as they were or what they should be, like, is there a remedy? And I'm sure there are a lot of things that could be said and stated as far as ways to have the fog dissipate and to see the sun rising on the horizon. But the thing that, as we've prayed through as elders, as our staff, and just personally, like, that we've began to really believe is a way of moving through this fog. And we believe that actually it's actually both groups, adults and the next generation, working together, that there would be a notion of intentional investment that would be had, that we look past ourselves and look at how we could intentionally invest in those around us, and particularly in the next generation, that actually might be an alleviation of the fog if we're actually serious about what God has said. Because if we look actually in the Old Testament, there's a particular life example that I think encapsulates our lives in general that I want to look at just for a moment to challenge us when we think about what's next. That we here at Rise City Church are saying what we believe is what's next is this notion of an even greater intentional investment in the next generation. Because this is exactly what God said to Elijah. If you look at 1 Kings chapter 19, 1 Kings overall gives the story of this prophet Elijah. And Elijah, man, he's got a ton of incredible God moments in his resume. One of which is God used him to like help raise a dead person back to life. Now, I don't know about you, but if I got that in my back pocket, like, yeah, God used me one time to raise a dead person. Whenever the fog thickens, I'd be like, oh, remember when God used me to raise a dead person? I'd be like, I'm okay. I'm pushing through. But that's not what we see with Elijah. And in particular, in 1 Kings 19, Elijah comes off of this incredible spiritual high moment when he's used by God to call fire down from heaven. I mean, you got to read this to incinerate this offering and to prove that God was the true God. And the worshipers of this other God named Baal, like, their God didn't respond. And Elijah was used in that moment. But it was right after that moment when he was on a spiritual high and mountaintop that King Ahab and his wife Jezebel get word of the way that he essentially showed up these other prophets of Baal. And so they put a bounty on his head and say, if we find you and when we find you, we're snuffing you out. You're a dead man. And you think if you're Elijah in that moment, you'd be like, yeah, you want to try and kill me? I raised a dead person to life. I just called fire from heaven. You want to mess with me? But his spiritual highs are not what get him through this moment. Rather, he looks a lot like us in this moment. 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 3 through 5, Jezebel said, we're going to find you and hunt you down and kill you. And it says this in verse 3, Elijah was afraid, which could potentially be the sentiments of the American church over the last 2 years, where fear drives so much. And he ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there while he himself went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and he prayed that he might die. And in some weird way, but in commiseration, there could be some encouragement that comes to see that a prophet of God who is used by God actually has a moment that he wants to just like, can I just come to you, God, and be done? Because some of us have felt that way. He sits down, prays he might die. He says, I've had enough, Lord. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he laid down under this bush and he fell asleep. I mean, in many ways, in this moment, he's just done. And his anxiety has led to not just sadness, but really a state of depression. To which if you keep reading in 1 Kings 19, God responds and sends these angels to minister to him, to feed him and say, no, don't give up. You can't let the fog encapsulate you and just drown you out. And there's this moment that Elijah begins to kind of have a little bit more invigoration. He starts to journey to this mountain known as Mount Horeb. But when he arrives at the mountain, he's not going to climb the mountain for another spiritual high, but rather he's finding himself still in this place of wanting to retreat, to hide, and just like, I'm done. This is 1 Kings 19:9. It says, then he, referring to Elijah, went into a cave and he spent the night. And the word of the Lord then came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? I think many of us at times have found ourselves retreating to caves in this season. And God in his grace and his mercy has not said, well, fine, just stay in the cave and I'll find someone else. But he does pursue. And he asks this powerful and poignant question that I think he asked not just to Elijah, but he asked to every one of us, what are you doing here, Elijah? Brandon, what are you doing here? I know it's been hard and I know you're feeling things are off, but like, what are you doing here? Is that your answer is just to retreat? Your answer is just to hide in a cave? Like, what are you doing here? I mean, if God asked you that question, how would you respond? What are you doing here? And even if you keep reading, God, in a gentle way, comes to Elijah in a still small voice. And I think the encouragement is God's not yelling at us. God's not like retreating away from us. He's being gentle. He's simply saying, what are you doing? Okay, you're feeling off. So how are we going to get through this? And God's response to Elijah is this notion of investment, and particularly investment into those around him who are younger than him. If you skip down, after he asked him, what are you doing here? This is picking up in verse 15. It says, the Lord then said to him, I need you to go back the way you came. That's a powerful word for some of you in here this morning. Some of you need to go back from where you came and remember pre-fog, and remember spiritual vibrancy, and remember when you were active on mission for God, and remember when you were choosing not to just wallow in your own sorrows, but beginning to take on the sorrows of others and point them to Christ and to invest. He says, some of you need to go back the way that you came, Elijah, and go back to the desert of Damascus. And when you get there, anoint Hazael, king of Aram. Also, I want you to anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and also anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel, Malalalala, to succeed you as a prophet. You can't pronounce it either. What's interesting is these three people that God calls Elijah to go to are all younger than him. And he says, I want you to anoint them, pour into them, and call them to lead. And in particular, Elisha, scholars estimate that Elijah is roughly between 50 and 60 years old in this moment, and Elisha is somewhere in his mid-20s to late 20s. And for the next 4 to 6 years, Elijah will walk with, encourage, and pour into Elisha before he then passes the mantle of leadership on to him and encourages him, now you are the next prophet of Israel. And so when Elijah found himself in this heavy-laden fog and funk, what God said is, I want you to be intentional to invest in the next generation. And that will give you a vibrancy and a spiritual flourishment that you are so longing for, and it will also ensure that the next generation doesn't go without hearing the goodness of God, but continues to know it, experience it, taste it, and live it in their generation. And I think God says, that's what I want for you too, Rise City Church. So we've got these cards and we just ask, well, what's next? What's next here, Rise City? And the answer is actually found in the question. What's next is the next generation. How do we as a people intentionally invest in those younger than us, or perhaps those birthed through high school or birthed through college age, young adult, to see the fog actually not thicken but dissipate, and see the sun coming up over the horizon and then begin to shine through that fog and creating this beautiful light that gives hope and healing around us. That's what God is, I think, calling us to. And so I would say it this way, that the fastest way out of the fog is choosing to look beyond yourself to the next generation. The fastest way out of that fog is to choose to look beyond yourself and say, how can I invest in the next generation? And with Rise City Church, I want to share with you for just a few minutes 4 particular ways that we feel compelled and convicted to say, we're up in the ante, and this is how we are going to, as a church, invest in the next generation and invite you to be a part of it. And then I'll close by what I do every Vision Sunday, giving you the ways in which we encourage you to somehow engage and be involved, if you're not going to engage and be involved in this aspect of the next generation. So the first way I would tell you that we are wanting to intentionally invest in the next generation here at Rise City Church is we want to continue our unapologetic emphasis to serve in Rise City Kids. That dynamic right across the hall, you hear us talking about all the time, and you're going to continue to hear us talking about it all the time. That is the future of the church. And we will never apologize for saying, will you give an hour and 15 minutes of your time to pour into them? That's not childcare or babysitting over there. What that is raising up the next level of followers of Christ, the next missionaries or pastors or just entrepreneur business people who are going to make a difference, and to create in them a safe environment where they feel loved and secured, and they are told their identity in Jesus Christ, and they are given a biblical worldview and foundation, and they do get to hear the good news of Jesus and have someone or many intentionally pour into their life and say, you're not in this alone, we're here for you. That's why we're going to keep calling you to serve and be involved over there. We will continue to, over and over again. Of the 1,001 who average attendance here at Rise City, 263, that's 26%, are birthed through 12th grade. Over a quarter of our church is right there and right over here. That's amazing, but we've got to continue to invest. So currently we're looking for 10 to 15 new weekly volunteers. Those volunteers either lead small groups or maybe help out at the check-in process or in different ways. And we encourage weekly because it builds relationships and rapport with the students. And so whether it's leading a small group or right now, one particular area is we need some people to step into the kind of support ministry there within Rise City Kids. We have a lot of kids who either have special needs or neurodeficiencies, and we try to do our absolute best to mainline them in the services, but then to provide them opportunities with a one-on-one with interactive in the small group environment. And currently we have a waiting list of a lot of kids and parents waiting that they can have a one-on-one because we don't have enough people doing that. But what a breath of fresh air and what a declaration of love and value and dignity to the family and to the child when we will have enough people to say, yes, I want to come link arms with you and your child and help and pour in to that boy or that little girl. And so those are ways to serve. And if you can't commit to being weekly, then we always are looking for a crop of subs and volunteers, because our weeklies definitely at times need to say, hey, time out, I need a break. And so Whitney's like, amen. I mean, just being real. But if we have that group of subs and we have the constant weeklies, we're going to continue to pour into and invest in the next generation. I highly encourage you to consider saying yes in that environment. Number two, along with increasing or keeping our focus at Rise City Kids, investment there, we're also going to now broaden a deeper investment in Rise City Youth. And that means our middle school and our high school kids, our students. So I look at church a lot like baseball. And so when we started, it's like we gotta have a good farm system, and then as we raise them up, eventually, they can go play in the pros, and then we can have the people to develop A, AA, AAA. We've got a good farm system, and now we're trying to get to the AAA, and we're ready to go. And so for us, what that means is we're gonna try to increase both our financial investment as well as our volunteer and resource investment in this group. Because here, in case you didn't know that, middle school and high schoolers, dude, it's the wild, wild west out there. It's crazy town. Crazy town. And we've got to do something because trust me, your kids are getting discipled far more by TikTok than they are by the Bible. And so if we just sit back and be like, oh, wrong answer. Wrong answer, because we have a God that loves them, has a plan for them, and we want to see them prosper in their relationship with Jesus. So we're going to invest in their lives. So a couple things. One, we recently hired a new youth pastor named Anthony Hall. I cannot say how thrilled I am for him to be here. He's a younger guy, incredible guy. And so we said, you know what? Let's add some experience with him. So we also hired Jen Peterson to work with Rise City Youth. Jen's an incredible student pastor that's been here. So we've now said, I don't even know if we got the money for this, but let's just hire both of them because we need both of them to team up with already an incredible crop of volunteers who, between our last youth pastor and this one, had an incredible transition team. And they said, we're in. We love these middle schoolers and high schoolers. And they have a dynamic team now that we believe is going to make some significant difference in the lives of these teenagers. I want you to meet Anthony just for a moment. So I said, hey, can you share your story? So this is Anthony Hall's story, and tell me he's not somebody like, oh yeah, this is exciting what God is doing here at Rise City Youth. So here's Anthony's story.
My name is Anthony Hall, and I am the new youth pastor here at Rise City Church. Honestly, it's pretty incredible that I even get to say that because I did not grow up in church, nor did I think I would ever be a pastor or work in ministry. My parents have been divorced since I was 2 years old, so I never really knew them together. Neither of them attended church. No one else in my family attended church, so I kind of was left with everything but church, and I actually got into drinking and smoking and selling drugs at a really young age, and it kind of just started to spiral from there. My junior year of high school, I ended up getting kicked off the basketball team for being caught with possession of drugs, and so got kicked off the basketball team, and then I really didn't know who I was. The problem is all I knew were these escapes. Fast forward, I ended up graduating my senior year, and you know when you graduate school how it's like everyone's like, oh, where are you going to college, blah, blah, blah. Everyone had this plan for their life but me. As some time went on, one of my best friends who grew up going to a church camp, he was like, hey, this is the year, like you got to come with me. And I was like, no offense, man, church isn't for me. That's weird. I'm not going to do it. And then he just used my kryptonite. He was like, well, if you just don't think you can win the basketball tournament, I get it. And I was just like, all right, you got me. I'm in now. The first night of the summer camp, it was different because not only was it my first time experiencing church and church camp and God, but I was surrounded by this church that I didn't know with these other youth members and youth students that I didn't know and a youth pastor that I didn't know, and I was extremely uncomfortable. I wasn't willing to like open up and embrace the experience. I was more so just kind of sheltering it off and blocking it out because I was so uncomfortable. So I walked out, and my plan was to go home, and the youth pastor who was leading our little like cohort or youth group at the time, it was about 11 kids that went to camp. He caught me in the lobby at the end of service, and he was like, hey, I'll pay for your flights home on Wednesday if you stay one more day and give it everything you have. Just attend every service, don't be disruptive, and if you still don't like it, if you're still uncomfortable, I will fly you home. So Tuesday, we go through the day. Tuesday night service comes and worship started. We did like the fun jump around song, and I remember like not really wanting to jump, but then the next song came on, and I remember closing my eyes just because everyone else was, and I was like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm just gonna close my eyes. And I mean, that moment right there is the first time I remember ever feeling God, and I just felt really loved for the first time. I felt like I was able to understand and really discern that kind of everything I was doing was wrong. I realized when I got back how many addictions I had in my life and how many bad habits and things that were part of my life that didn't need to be and weren't supposed to be. And luckily I was blessed with a youth pastor. That youth pastor from the group was so invested in all 11, 13, however many kids. He was so invested in their lives that I felt, even though I felt like the odd man out because I had never been to church before, I felt comfortable enough to go to him and say, hey, here are my questions. And then once I got through my questions, I was able to say, hey, here's where I'm at. This is how I live. Is this right? Is this wrong? Or I know this is wrong. You know, the list goes on and on and on. Fast forward about 3 weeks to a month, I actually go to Bible college. I felt so intrigued by it that I was like, I'm gonna go to it. And I ended up serving on the youth team and just getting a lot of opportunity from that. And I just fell in love with youth ministry. And so now when I say I'm blessed to be here, I seriously mean it, not just at Rise, but doing ministry in general. Everything that we look at in the world that we feel like is twisted or wrong or off, the root of the answer falls into the next generation. If we can raise up this next generation right, if we can invest in them intentionally, they will do all the work. They will build out a new foundation to where they're not going to be in the same spot with their kids. The next generation is more than just a ministry to me. It's kind of a movement. And when I look at the students, even that I've been able to encounter in my time here at Rise, they're eager to learn, not just to hear what you say and then disprove it. They're curious, they want to think and chew on it. I believe that Rise City Youth can be a beacon of hope, not just to Lakeside and the Santee area, but really to all of San Diego. I think that we already have such a solid core group of students that it's just gonna grow, that their excitement for Jesus is just gonna grow, that we're gonna see seeds planted for the first time, and we're also gonna see a lot of good fruit come to life within the students that we have and don't have already. I promise you that God is doing something big. He is building up something big that's gonna impact more people than we can imagine. So if we can have people that feel called to youth ministry, or even if you just wanna, and you believe in the next generation, you just wanna invest in them, there's no better time than to start now. There's no better place than here at Rise.
So excited about Anthony, Jen, and the entire team. So they're going to continue currently to keep middle school at 11 a.m. on the Sunday service and continue to ask and hopefully encourage more people to serve and volunteer. They're actually going to move high school off of Sunday nights. They're moving on September the 7th. They're going to move to Wednesday nights from 7 o'clock to 9 p.m. And they're going to create a space and environment to invite kids, activities, have a worship service. And then they're going to take the small group component and move that to another night of the week inside of people's homes that they'll hopefully launch in the fall, later in the fall. And so they're really wanting to go after just the next gen. It's exciting. They're going to be creating worship teams that are led by students. And so vocals and people who play instruments. And so we're looking currently for someone to help in that, but we want to see students really kind of take ownership and kind of raise up the next worship teams and worship leaders in the next generation. And so let us know if that is something of interest to you, but really excited about a lot of those things that are taking place. Along with that, we will continue to commit because we believe summer camps are so vital and important in kind of spiritual formation of teenagers. We as a church are going to continue to do our best to invest in trying to subsidize the cost of summer camps by 50% because we do not want cost to be a barrier for the potential of life change in a teenager. So whether that's in our budgets or even in the overage of Christmas offering funds, which we'll talk about more in a moment, we're going to continue to make that type of investment because we believe that God is doing a great work and we want to see great things happen. So we're going to do that along with Rise City Kids. And then actually this benefits both. The next thing I would tell you is that we are going to actually invest in building new facilities and sports courts for more connection opportunities. Now this is a big deal. I'm going to show you in just a moment. But we officially 2 months ago, plans have been submitted to the County of San Diego. And so now we're on their clock, which if you know anything about the County of San Diego, we're just waiting. But it's like, it's happening. We spent over $100,000 already on architectural designs. I mean, we are waiting. And what we are going to be doing is finishing out all the exterior here at Rise City, which includes building a new youth room, as well as a new room for 4th and 5th grade, the renovation of all the sports courts, so we'll have basketball courts as well as pickleball. I promise you pickleball is coming, people. It's changed in the country and the world in the name of Jesus. We're gonna have an outdoor kind of patio space that's got like maybe some fire pits and booths to sit out and hang out between that which is the playground and the new sports courts, finish out the parking lot, fence the property. And so here's a little bit of a glimpse of what that's going to look like. God willing, we break ground by the end of the year or the start of 2023. But here would be the sports courts on this side. That outdoor patio space is over here. We've got the new youth space, 4th and 5th grade. We'll have a new set of bathrooms. And we feel like that we believe that it's the time for us to invest in this. I'll talk more about money in a moment, but we currently have about $1 million of liquid assets. And so we're committed to giving at least or paying at least $750,000 to $800,000 of that to this new project, which on the high end we estimate costing about $2 million, which means we're going to pay hopefully 50% in money you've already given to make this happen because we believe so strongly in the next generation. And I hope that excites you. I hope that excites you, and it's going to be really, really awesome. And the last thing I would tell you, our commitment to invest in the next generation here at Rise City Church is also the launch of a new marriage ministry to offer greater family support. Coming out of the pandemic, we saw a lot of things come up through the pandemic inside of the household, whether it be in married couples or couples that were trying to co-parent together. And so we want to try to intentionally invest in those of you that are married or parenting to create this ministry. And so on Saturday, October 1st, we're going to have our first kind of marriage ministry launch event, which is going to be a lot of fun. More details to come. In November, we'll have a special date night that we're planning and encouraging you to go on. And so say yes to a date night, make it happen. That's a big deal. We'll have our first ever marriage retreat, February 10th through the 12th in 2023. So we're gonna have our first retreat. So now we have a men's retreat, women's retreat, and a marriage retreat. And we're also gonna be really embracing forming marriage mentors. So trying to say, we're gonna try to pair up those who've been married for a while and feel like that they've been through things and so now they can invest, but for you to have someone you can come to encourage you, to give wisdom, but to have a whole marriage mentoring network. And so these are some things that we said, when God says, what are you doing here? And you find yourself in a cave versus us being like, the fog's just too thick and whatever. We're not saying whatever, we're saying this is what we're going to do. We're gonna keep encouraging you to be over there in Rise City Kids. We're gonna keep investing even more so in Rise City Youth. We're gonna build new facilities and we're gonna try to create opportunities to strengthen and enhance marriages, which make a big difference in the confidence and the thriving of young adults, teenagers, and children. So lots of ways that we're doing this, and I hope that you find a way to get engaged in one of those endeavors. Now, a few other things with Vision Sunday. Perhaps you're like, that's awesome, but I don't know about any of that, so I'm not going to let you off the hook. I've still got other things for you can get involved in, okay? So I want to finish with the same 4 things I've been saying for the last 9 years of ways to get involved here at Rise City Church. If you call this place your home, then this is what we would encourage you to do. The 4 things are simply this: to connect, serve, give, and invite. Connect, serve, give, and invite. The first of those 4 is to connect. We believe you need to have community, and community comes when you choose to actually connect. Connect by making a priority to say, I'm gonna be here on Sunday mornings, and if I'm not gonna be here, I'm gonna watch online, but I'm gonna connect with being a part of this church body. Connect by joining a small group. As Robert mentioned, we're gonna be having a groups fair on September 11th. He's already got a little booth out there if you wanna start looking at different groups to be a part of, but connection is so vital, especially when it happens in these circles, in homes, or here at the church, when you have a group of people to do life with. So choose and say, I'm going to connect by being a part of a small group, or perhaps I'm going to connect by being a part of one of the ministries here at Rise City. We have an incredible men's ministry, women's ministry, mom's ministry, as well as now this marriage ministry, which offer different events, different groups, opportunities, and we constantly are announcing those things. And so say, I'm not just going to stand back and do nothing. I'm going to choose to connect. And maybe a small group isn't your thing, because maybe your current phase of life or what you've been going through, you need like a particular group of people that are going through the same thing. We also have support groups. Support groups, whether it's trying to get your budget aligned with Financial Peace University. Perhaps it's Grief Share if you've lost someone. Trying to overcome an addiction with Celebrate and Recovery. We even have a group that's called post-abortion healing, which is if you're being wrecked with guilt from that decision, how do you find the grace of God in the midst of that? There are different support groups as well. Check out the booth after service to talk to Robert, but be committed to connecting here at Rise City. The second thing is to serve. To serve. And as I mentioned, we have probably over 50% of you that are serving, and serving perpetuates this investment in this community, and that's a big deal. And we want to be a people who are contributors and not just consumers. And so I know that many of your schedules are different, so maybe the other 50%, it's not saying you're not doing it because you don't want to. Maybe there's a lot of things that are prohibiting that, but find out, is there a way that you can engage? Perhaps it's as simple as like being here on Sunday mornings. We need people to be greeters, especially during the 11 a.m. hour. You're already at this service. Get here just a little earlier and be a nice handshake and a warm smile to somebody. Helping with hospitality, helping on the security team, the parking team. We are currently in need of people to help push buttons and do lights and sound with the production team, the worship team. I mean, there's so many different areas to serve in Rise City Kids or over here during the middle school service. But don't just come and consume. Say, how can I also contribute and serve? And when you came in, you were given this card. There's a little perforated tab that we really would love for you, even right now, to start thinking about what area do I want more information about, or could I say, yes, I'll get involved in. Fill that out. Perforate the tab, and at the end of the service, there's some boxes there in the back. Put it in there, and we will get a hold of you this week to see how you can get engaged. So connect, serve. The third thing is to give. Now, I've spent the last month talking about giving, so I'm not gonna belabor this point. If you want to know why we say what we say about giving, you can go back and listen or watch the whole cryptocurrency series. Robert earlier said cryptocurrency. It was not cryptocurrency. It was Christo. Difference between the two. Christo versus crypto. Thank you, Robert. You completely messed up my series. Okay. But I do think it's important in terms of giving to tell you where your money goes. I think it's important. I think there's a part of being obedient and saying, Lord, I want to be generous, but also I think there's a realistic side. Where does the money that I give go? And that's why every Vision Sunday, I want to show you where it goes and ways to give. So first off, I would just say one of the ways to be generous and give here is to always bring something. When you walk in, you see these three little bins that say abs. Always bring something. And we encourage you to consider others first when you come here. So bring a box or a canned food item every Sunday that you come here. Put a little alarm or reminder on your phone. But those boxed and canned food items that are given to the Lakeside Health Center, and then they distribute to families in need in the community, it's a small way, but it's a significant way to come in a posture of generosity. The second way to give is through the general offering, which we talk about every single week, whether you give online or the app or the physical gifts in the back. I mean, you hear the spiel every week. But it's important to be a people who give consistently. And when it comes to our offerings and where the money goes, here are some numbers I think are important for you to know. First off, our annual budget this year is $1.6 million, which is still crazy to say that considering in year one we were trying to have $150,000. So that's a little bit of a growth curve for me, 10 times the amount. I'm trying to figure out, okay, this is wow, God, you've entrusted us with this much. Currently, we're on pace, which is amazing, especially as I told you, we're so generous with sending missionaries to Idaho, Texas, South Carolina, all these places. We're still, in light of that, on trajectory to have $100,000 over budget this year for $1.7 million, which is unbelievable. And that does not include the Christmas offering, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And as I said earlier, we currently have available in savings and kind of liquid assets right around $1 million that we can use for ministry purposes, with a little bit of other that's already been allocated in different directions. Now let me show you this pie graph. This is where when you give your money goes, okay? So if you want to throw that pie graph up here, 53% goes to personnel. We have 7 full-time, 8 part-time, as well as 8 kids care workers. Kids care workers are those when we have different events and they watch your children. All of those are considered employees here at Rise City Church. 53%, that's salaries, health benefits, and retirement benefits. That number increased this last year by about 2% because we were able now, and we felt it was important, to offer health benefits to all the full-time staff as well as a few others and to their families, which is a big deal. I personally say thank you that when my 4 kids, if one of them gets sick, I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is gonna break the bank, but there's actually a copay now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So 53% goes to the staff, and I would tell you, I think we have an awesome staff and they're worth investing in. That number for us, 55% is kind of our high threshold. We say we don't want to go over that. We'd love to stay even further under that if we can, but that means you have to give more, so go for it. 17% goes to ministry budgets. What that means is just what happens here at Rise City, the kids ministry, men's ministry, women's ministry, worship production, all that kind of stuff, with 7% of what you give going particularly to the next gen. It's the largest funded ministry budget in the church is the next gen, because we don't want to stay in caves. We want to invest intentionally in the next generation. 12.5% of what you give goes out immediately. Missions and outreach. Stadia is a church planting partnership. Convoy of Hope works with feeding kids in third world countries, empowering women, coming around helping farmers have greater sustenance for their crops in third world countries. It also meets needs and disaster relief efforts. It goes towards helping and counseling to people here in the community and the church. It goes towards when people come in and we give gas cards and food cards and ways to help them. And it also goes to outreach things like sledding along with ice cream distribution. You get donut holes, we give the community ice cream. We're a healthy church, people. But 12.5% of what you give goes out. And here's something that's so important to see. That number does not include the Christmas offering. So if you take total amount of money that comes in, including last year, the Christmas offering was over $500,000, which was crazy. That equated to 27.4% of all money that comes in is sent out to the community and to the nation and to the world. And that's a huge deal. 9.5% goes to facilities. You can expect to see that number go up in the next year and a half as we make this expansion. 4% to office admin, 2.5% to savings, and this one makes you want to puke in your mouth, but I don't know how to get away from it. 1.5% goes to merchant fees. Merchant fees mean Visa, MasterCard, Discover. When you give online, they take a portion to the tune of $40,000 to $60,000 a year here. Welcome to Church Business 101. We're trying to figure out ways to try to get that lower. But that's where your money goes. Get what?
Teach the kids to write checks.
Teach the kids to write checks? I got to teach them even to give first, but cool. Couple other stats. Right now, our top 15 givers account for 23% of all tithes and offerings. Top 20 equate to 28% of all tithes and offerings, which means that's a really healthy balance. A ton of people give and give significantly and also just give something to this church. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and let's continue to trust God to be generous on every occasion. The last way to give here at Rise City, and I'll get ready to wrap this up, but this is so exciting because each year we always talk about the Christmas offering. And that's coming up on December 11th. And pretty much throughout the month of December, it's like everything that you give is completely given away. Man, that offering is just taking on a life of its own. This is our 10th year for the Christmas offering. And the very first Christmas offering we had was $16,000. Last year was $506,000. It's nuts. And year to year, things change. So it's not like, oh, we got to beat that. I mean, it'd be awesome if we beat that. But it's just like, but whatever comes in is going to go out. And over the last 9 years, now this has been our 10th year, we've helped start new churches, both in San Diego and internationally. We've dug clean water wells in different third world countries like Bolivia and Peru. We've helped rescue and also provide help for girls that are caught in the sex trafficking industry. We've helped give money to pregnancy care clinics. We've helped bless other local churches by giving to their general budgets because we believe we're all on the same team. We've fed children in poverty. We've empowered women. We've helped farmers grow crops. We've helped local schools. We've blessed teachers. We've bought new vehicles, groceries, gasoline, surgeries, medical bills, home project renovations, even the new Lakeside Library. I mean, it took a while, and I wondered where the money went, but it's being built, and you helped build that thing. It's awesome. And so this year, our encouragement is like it is every year. What does it look like? If you could put in your mind between now and December, how could you maybe give $600 to this offering? Some of you can add another zero then go way past that. Some of you might need to take a zero off. But how do we get to that place to giving generously to this? Because this year, here's where the money is going. First off, the staple that we've always had and will continue is your nominations. You know people, you know organizations that could use extra blessing. And so starting November 1st, December 1st, you fill out a form, you let us know who we can bless. We write checks, send a letter, and it's incredible to see the way that God works as you nominate and how God works in just the right time to impact people's lives. And we got a lot of exciting stories to share from even last year's nominations as we get closer. The second initiative this year is really special because we're calling it 10 for 10. And 10 for 10 is, it's the 10th year for the Christmas offering. And so what we thought we would do instead of us picking initiatives is you're going to nominate. And what we're going to do is give up to $25,000 to 10 different organizations, and we're going to do it Shark Tank style. I don't know if you've seen Shark Tank. It might be an important show to watch for some research with this, but let me tell you in brief how this is going to work. You can go right now to the website address, risecitychurch.com/10 for the number 10. risecitychurch.com/10 for 10. I think she'll have it up here. There it is on the screen, so you can mark that down. It's got all the information. But what we're doing with this is we're going to pick 10 nonprofit organizations that you yourself either support or serve with. And the organizations don't have to necessarily be overtly a Christian organization, but they must operate and align with our stated mission, vision, values at Rise City Church within kind of our kingdom impact emphasis. You can see the parameters of that on the website. And so as you nominate, you're going to fill out a form. You can do the form now. And then on October the 8th, Saturday, October the 8th, you'll get a time and you have your own Shark Tank presentation. And we've got a subcommittee of people who are going to be there. And you yourself can share with whatever visual aids you want. Or if you have connections, you can be people from the organization. If you know the CEO, bring him or her or whatever. But you're going to share how this organization would benefit from this. And we're going to give up to $25,000 to these 10 organizations, which will create 10 new partnerships, as well as maybe 10 opportunities for us to invite you to serve in throughout the community. But we just felt like in honor of you, but also what God's doing, it'd be so cool for all of us to be a part of this. And so, I can't wait. I'm not allowed to be on that committee, I don't think, because I'd be like Mr. Wonderful, and have a lot of skepticism. But please nominate, and we'll share more about that. But that's this year's, is your nominations, the 10 for 10, and then overage that goes past funding the initiatives will go towards subsidizing student camps and helping kids invite their friends to go to camp and pay for that. Excited about that? I am too. Last but not least, invite. Connect, serve, give, and invite. It's not just about us, it's about the people outside of here. And only you have the kind of the social spaces and workspaces that are around all the people that you're around. So how can you invite them to church? How can you invite them to watch online? How can you invite them to your small group? How can you invite them to a men's event, a women's event, a mom's event, a marriage event? How can you invite them to coffee, have them over to your house? How can we continue to be engaged in the lives of other people? Because we just wholeheartedly believe that we're not meant to stay in the cave. And God would come to us in a still small voice and say, what are you doing here? There's still need. And I want to use you. And sometimes the best way out of the fog and the funk is for you not to sit back idle, but for you to get your hands back in the game and engage and invite people and pour into people. And it's almost like a defibrillator to the heart. When you see God work in the life of someone you've invited or invested in, it's like whoa, it like recharges your own spiritual life as well. And so we're wanting a lot of those like moments where we come back to life. Someone said something back there. I missed it. I don't know. All right. That's all I got. That was a lot, though. Are we excited about what's coming up? All right. So here's what I want to do. Will you stand with me? I'm going to invite the band to come out. I want to pray for us. One last thing that we're really excited about is the band has actually started to write their own songs in hopes of, by our 10-year birthday next October, we'll have a first album from Rise City Church Worship. And so I want to pray for us. And then we actually sang the song at the very start of the service, but you didn't know they had written it, but now we're going to sing it together just to celebrate, and it really encapsulates just our heart. And we'll close out the service that way. So let me pray, call us to wake up, rise, and shine, and then let's just sing this song as a final anthem and ask God to clear that fog. Clear that fog. God, thank you for this church. So grateful for each and every person, those who've been here a long time, those who are brand new. Would you knit our hearts together, God, that same notion of that family dinner years ago, but we'd still be a family, God, on mission together. When we hurt, God, we would hurt together. When we celebrate together. When we take a step forward, we step forward together. And God, we would just see you move. And God, we do pray that you would do a great and awesome work, not just through our church, but God, in the next generation and in churches all over this country and around the world. We wholeheartedly believe, God, that you call us to be a loving and life-giving church, a loving and life-giving people who bring hope and healing in Jesus' name. And so may we live that out. And we praise you, God. We thank you in Jesus' name. Everybody said? Amen. Hey, may we be a people who wake up, rise, and shine. Wake up to Jesus, rise to life, and shine to others. And after today, even more so in particular, shine to the next generation for Jesus. So have a great Sunday. Let's sing together. And man, excited for what's coming up next. Excited for what's next.